Welcome to the Open Apple podcast, where we celebrate the Apple II. Whether you're a long-time user, a nostalgic visitor, or a newcomer to the community, join us as we share news and memories of Steve Wozniak's most famous personal computer.
Hello and welcome to Open Apple. This is episode 68 for February 2017. I am your co-host, the first, Quinn Dunkey, and with me as always is co-host, the second, Mike McGinnis. How you doing, Mike?
Doing all right, Quinn. How are you?
Good. Second time was the charm on that opening.
Yeah. Well, it's been a little bit since we've recorded, but and you've been busy dealing with rain and fun stuff like that, and I've had hard drive failures and all sorts of stuff going on here, so I think they can forgive us.
Hard drive failures, yikes! That doesn't sound good.
Well, I have an iMac that has this 3 terabyte Fusion drive in it, and I went to bed on a Friday night, and I had like terabyte and a half free, and I woke up on Saturday morning, and it was completely filled. 0 bytes available. And the thing, I don't know if any of you Mac owners out there have ever filled up your hard drive, you know how badly Mac OS reacts to that, in that it stops booting and you no longer have access to it. So I ended up having to wipe everything and start over. I think pretty much all the important stuff was backed up, and I've reinstalled all the apps and things like that. Right now, it's all about getting the settings right for recording things like podcasts. So hopefully the sound at my end will be okay. But other than that, it's been kind of quiet here.
Yeah, it's the little stuff that you don't remember when you reboot or reinstall a whole machine. You know, it's like, oh, that little command line utility that I installed 5 years ago that I've been relying on. Now I don't know where to get it anymore. It's little things like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because you can't remember its name. And
Yeah, you forget all the little configuring of things that you've done over the years.
Yeah, it was surprisingly frustrating because, you can boot to recovery mode or a single user mode, which gives you the command line at least, and it would not let me in. You could see the files, and I think that was sort of a red herring because I couldn't actually do anything with them. It wouldn't let me mount the file system as writable, so I couldn't copy anything, but eventually I just decided, the heck with it. It's quicker just to rebuild. So here we are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Modern operating systems do not react well to being out of disk space at all.
No.
That is not something that anyone ever tests, is what's going to happen to this system if there are 0 bytes remaining. Unlike our Apple IIs, which responded quite well to that because it was a very common occurrence.
Right. You just put a new floppy in.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Apple IIs, should we talk about some of them, since this is kind of why we're here?
Oh, sure. Hit the music.
It may be old, but there's still news. Apple II news.
So we've got a lot of news to talk about this month, so we're going to forego our usual guest spot and spare you all Mike and I's attempts to sound interesting to someone more interesting than us, and jump right into the news.
No one likes us.
It's not that they don't like us, Mike. It's that we're not interesting.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's like your dad always said. It's not that I'm not listening to you. It's that I don't care. First up, so some of these items are a little bit dusty because it's been a while since we did any news, but this is the gingerbread Apple II that some of you may have seen go around. It's sort of holiday themed, even though it's February. It was holiday back when we took these notes. And it looks like a father and son team made an Apple II out of gingerbread. And it's quite an excellent rendition, I have to say. It's reasonably to scale. And they made the keyboard out of like Purdy's little square chocolates. And, as someone who's made a gingerbread house from scratch, I can attest it is a difficult medium, architecturally speaking. So this is an excellent rendition, I have to say.
Yeah, you sort of realize why they don't build buildings out of this gingerbread stuff.
Yep. It's
really cool because it's not just the external case. I mean, the lid actually comes off, and they've built a motherboard inside, and there's a with the disk controller card, and there's a disk drive next to it, and they even made a floppy drive out of, or a floppy disk out of the gingerbread. Although I don't think the drive door opens, but it looks like you can, if you're daring, you can go ahead and insert that floppy that they made into a real disk 2 drive.
Yes, that's the head dirtying disk.
That's right. Yeah.
That was less popular than the head cleaning discs back in the day.
Yeah, if you want to test to see whether your head cleaning kit is effective, you use this first.
Yeah, there you go. There's a use case for it. Anyway, there's some good pictures there. So I recommend taking a look. So next up is something that we've talked about recently on the show, and the Apple II-verse was a Twitter and a Buzz and a Facebook all about it, which was the 8BitDo Bluetooth controller, which had an Apple II theme and had a dongle, which was Bluetooth and Apple II compatible. So in theory, you get a Bluetooth controller for your Apple II, and also potentially Bluetooth other things for your Apple II, because it was sort of a generic GamePort Bluetooth dongle. All very exciting potential, as you may have seen now from multiple sources, including Chris Torrance, and here I'm going to link to a thread on Facebook about it, about another user who received this thing. It's a little bit disappointing. It turns out that the analog stick is actually implemented digitally, which, as an Apple II gamer, that's cardinal sin. The Apple II joysticks are, of course, analog, and the vast majority of games expect analog input. So some games like Lode Runner are still playable with it, but basically what this thing is doing is just faking 3 digital values for the analog stick. So 0, 80, and 255 for 3 positions, essentially. So, which seems like a disappointing oversight, considering they have analog sticks on this thing, and they could have done it properly with probably not much additional effort. So that's a bit of a letdown, I think.
Yep, disappointing, but and I don't think, this is obviously not something that can be fixed with a firmware update or the latest version of whatever software driver you have, but it looks nice.
It does. It looks very nice, yeah. And, it's possible this might be patchable. I don't know if the firmware on this thing is updatable. I honestly don't know. But, it's a microcontroller, and that thing, I'm sure, doing all the work. So maybe they can fix it. But it's not clear if the firmware on this thing is field updatable or not. But I would definitely save your money. It's a shame for all the effort they put into production values and everything on this thing.
Yeah, I was looking for one of the things that I was looking forward to, especially was the wireless connection. We've got all of these great, the CFFA 3000 and the SD floppy disks, the wireless one, the Unisdisk Air. That's it, and I think that's the only wireless option right now for connection to your Apple II. So I was hoping that they would do that this would lead to something else. There was a while back, there was this thing called the iDisk for the Apple II, which used Bluetooth to transfer files back and forth to your your emulated floppy card. And that part of it worked, but the interface was horrendous, and I don't think it sold that well. So, but that seems like an area where we're kind of lacking, and it would have been great to see somebody build on that. But I don't know if they're putting out something that's not really working from the start. That seems like a kind of a non-starter.
Yeah, it is. For as nice a device as it seems to be in every other way, it's a shame that it fell over on the very basics of functionality. Right. But I guess it is still a modern gamepad for your PC or whatever. So if you want to use it to play games with and have that Apple II feel in your hand or whatever, you certainly can still do that. And it's possible the device still has potential for hackers. That Bluetooth dongle for the GamePort is pretty interesting. I'd like to get my hands on that and play with it for a while, but. So far I would say probably save your money.
Yep.
All right, moving right along, we've got an article here on Hackaday for somebody who has, as their thesis in school, has emulated an Apple II on an AVR microcontroller. So he's basically created a small Apple II on a circuit board with a little keyboard and a little screen, and it's sort of simulating. Now, an AVR is sort of roughly equivalent to an early 8-bit computer in terms of horsepower. So this is sort of like emulating an Apple II on a TRS-80, maybe. So it's definitely a very limited Apple II, but it's like 12K of memory and no language card or anything like that. But it's surprisingly well done for the resources that he had to work with. So I recommend it. It's a good read, and as I say, he did his sort of research paper on what it's like to emulate a 6502 based microcomputer on an AVR. So I recommend a look.
Yeah, and the hardware build is pretty nice too. It's built on Vero board. It has a built-in display, keyboard, like you said, and a small speaker and the micro SD card for data. And there's a nice video that you can watch that's linked to on Hackaday, and we'll have that in the show notes.
For sure. Let's see. A little while back, we talked about a fellow who had done a version of the Kerbal Space Program for Apple II, and it was written in BASIC and surprisingly playable. And well, he's back this time. He's done it again. This time with Portal, and one of the darlings of the video game world of the past few years. I think you have to have been living in a cave not to know Portal if you're into gaming at all. And this is, once again, written in BASIC and a very charming, relatively playable kind of little game. So, it's a good look.
Now, we're talking about the Valve Portal, right? Not the original Apple II version of Portal.
Yes, I guess with this crowd, you have to clarify. Yeah, our audience is probably the only group in the world that would get confused by that statement.
Yep.
Yes, Portal, the famous student project that was called Narbuncular Drop, very unfortunately named, which Valve folks discovered and turned into a real product with absolutely amazing visual style and personality and production values, and spawned subsequent sequels and so on. But the original Portal stands as a real high point in PC gaming. And so this Apple II version is a very charming rendition of it, I think.
Yeah, and he even included the Apple II version of the song.
Oh, I even missed that part. That's great. Yes, the infamous "Cake is a Lie" song.
That's right. Excellent.
Well done, dude. And he did his same signature video involving various Back to the Future references and so on. This guy is clearly our people.
Yep, we like him.
I think a couple of months ago we were talking about printers and. Mm-hmm. The subject of the Emulator 2 color printer ribbons came up. I think we were talking to Kate Skotnicki about that. Right, and we were sort of bemoaning how great the Emulator 2 was with the color ribbon back in the day. It really did produce amazing images, if you didn't mind. As long as you didn't do the math on how much that image was costing you in ink to print, because, of course, the Emulator 2 ribbon has the 4 colors all in parallel. So, and the ribbon only goes one direction. So whatever color it's printing at the time, you lose the other 3 colors forever on that same section of ribbon. Mm. So it's an expensive proposition to print in full color with this thing, but it was amazing output-wise. And so we were saying how it's a shame that, those ribbons, if they still exist, are all dried up and you could never recreate that experience. Well, that was all lies. Turns out that a very, very enterprising and industrious Apple II community member has been remanufacturing Emulator 2 color ribbons. And this has apparently been happening for a while. We just didn't know about it. So, correcting that wrong here today, we will link to this thread on Facebook about this topic. And he's doing another run of them. By the time this airs, I don't know if there's still going to be any left, but I'm sure that he hopefully will do another run. If he runs out, then there's obviously demand. So he'll do hopefully another run. So if you want to get your hands on an Emulator 2 color ribbon, you may still have a chance.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited by this. He's got some samples, pictures. It's worth going to the thread just to see the pictures. If you've forgotten how good actually the color Emulator 2 really was, it's worth looking at the pictures just for that.
I can't wait to fire up Print Shop and make some banners.
Yes. Yeah, I very late in my Apple II career, I acquired a secondhand Emulator 2, and I was very excited to be able to print in color. And I did it a few times, but the ribbons were so expensive, and they wore out so quickly.
Yeah, they did.
That you sort of quickly learn to save it for very special occasions. So it's sort of like that bottle of wine that has some special significance, and you can't bring yourself to drink it because no occasion is ever quite special enough. Right. So it sits on your shelf for 20 years. I had an Emulator 2 color ribbon, and that's what I did with it. It sat on my shelf probably until it dried out because I was scared to use it. But yeah, it is impressive. So glad to see that happening.
Yeah.
So Mike, this next one is yours. Help me out here. Virtual Apple II, everyone's favorite web emulator, has been updated.
Actually, this is the other Virtual 2. This is the application that you can download. It's written by Gerard Putter, and it's been updated to version 7.5.4. And where's the...
I see. Yeah, Virtual 2. Okay, yes. Everyone's favorite Mac emulator.
Yeah, it can be very confusing, but we'll have a link in the show notes. But just a couple of new things that Gerard has included in a new option allowing forwarding all command key combinations to the virtual machine as open Apple key combinations instead of being handled by the emulator. Fixed a bug that would cause the application not to recognize the appropriate ROM file and remove the full screen mode feature. So.
Cool.
If you haven't updated by now, it's out there and you can go get that.
Yeah, I mean, any chance we get to plug Virtual 2, I'll take it. It's a great program. I am a proud owner of the full paid version, and it's worth every penny. And it's amazing that he continues to maintain and update it after all these years. I mean, it's not a new piece of software. So, and as we all know, keeping up with Mac OS is a full-time job if you want to keep your software running. So, good for him. Let's see. This next item is also yours, Mike. Looks like celebrity and noted douchebag Adam Carolla bought a Porsche.
Yeah, so a while back we talked about the die-cast Apple TrueScale Porsche that you could buy for a couple $100. It's the 1/18th scale. It's all decked out in the beautiful original Apple logo in the rainbow color livery. And that, of course, is based on a real Porsche, which started its life, I guess, as in like Hawaiian Tropic, I think was the first livery. And then it raced in the 1980 season as the Apple car and then became Red Roof Inn, Coca-Cola, and a bunch of other things. Well, that Porsche has been purchased by Adam Carolla. He paid $4 million for it. I guess he's a big Paul Newman racing fan. And Newman drove it as the Hawaiian Tropic car in the 1979 season. So Adam has it, and he's going to be driving it. It'll be, it won't be looking like the Apple one, but if you want to see it in action, I guess listen to his podcast if you can stand it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's nice to know what became of that car.
Yep.
And I would not recommend anyone listen to his podcast.
No. Unless you want to get very, very angry.
Yes. All right. Moving on to more pleasant topics. Everyone's favorite game when they were 5, Lemonade Stand, is back in a very sort of postmodern form. This is quite a neat one, Mike. Tell us about this.
So it's been rewritten as a chatbot, and you can play with it through your Facebook Messenger program. I've not used a lot of bots. Can you explain to me how this works?
Yeah, this is a thing people are doing where they take chatbot or chat systems like Facebook Messenger or even Twitter or similar types of things, anything that has a chatbot API, and people are implementing games in this format, especially text-based games, obviously. So, people have done a bunch of Infocom games like this, other text adventures. This is the first time I've seen something like this done, though. So doing this with Lemonade Stand. So I guess it foregoes the graphics, which of course was a big part of the charm of that game, showing you the weather as a sun or a little rain cloud or whatever. But you can at least play the game with the text. As far as I know, there's no images, but I don't know. Maybe they have some way of doing that. But yeah, it's again pretty charming and amusing.
Lemonade Stand was pretty ubiquitous back in the day if you had an Apple II, because I think that it shipped on, one of the demo discs that came with every single Apple II. And before that, you could get it on cassette for your original Apple II if you were around even earlier. But so I don't know anyone who had an Apple II back then that would not recognize this game.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine. It's such a canonical Apple II piece of software, and I can't even count the number of copies of it that I had lying around. It was one of those file-based games that just was everywhere. It showed up on every floppy for some reason.
Yep.
But very, very cute low-res graphics. I was
Indeed, yes.
I was like the graphics in that game. Well, speaking of old software, GBBS Pro, we were talking about that recently, and this is kind of big news. Looks like it's GPL'd now. Is it official?
Yeah, I know that Tony Diaz, who was on the show a while back, he was working with Kevin Smallwood. Kevin, this is one of those software, I guess, cautionary horror tales, if you want to call it that where, the original maker of it went out of business, somebody bought the rights, gave it to somebody else, passed it on to somebody else, and it ended up with Kevin. And I know that Kevin Smallwood was going to I know he had plans. I don't know if he was going to rewrite some stuff or update it, but basically it became unavailable to buy. But he was kind of out there, and if you posted it, he would ask you to take it down. So there was some efforts to either get him to release it to the public domain or do what he did, which is GPL it. So he still owns the copyright, but now you can download and use this software. And it's sort of interesting how some people got over this, because to me anyway, modems and especially BBS software is one of the few items for the Apple II or retro computing that doesn't seem to have a lot of use in the modern world. If you go buy a modem, you can't really call anyone with it other than this board to log in and go, gee, I was here. I don't know of any BBSs that, the retro ones that are set up through Telnet. I guess you could do it that way, but do you really get a lot of traffic? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me about this story, too, is that I can kind of understand people clinging to IP for old games or things that might, live again as mobile games or retro, pack-ins or something. But yeah, BBS software is sort of uniquely useless in this day and age. And it's the one piece of software I can think of that just basically has no way of ever coming back. It relied on this entire infrastructure of, this sort of section of civilization that's forever gone. So short of creating really artificial environments like the Telnet things, or people have done, phone line simulator setups at conferences and things. But, those types of things are very, temporary and sort of very gimmicky and niche. But the Telnet BBSs we've talked about before, it's neat that people are doing that. But, you go in there, you get a dozen people that go in once and go, oh, neat, I remember these, and then leave. So, yeah, I don't know. It does seem like there must be an emotional component there for someone to cling to a copyright, with such ferocity. But, I guess if you pay good money for it, then, to each their own.
Yeah, I suppose. All right, what's next?
Next up, we've got a gentleman by the name of Wade Clark, who cites Antoine Vigneault for inspiring him to save his childhood legacy. This is something that I myself recently embarked upon when I recovered all of my floppy disks from my parents' basement. And I proceeded to try and image them. And I had a blog post about that a while back. I can link to that, but we probably talked about it at the time.
Yep.
So Wade here has done the same thing. He's calling it the Bus Files, and it's sort of a collection of some games that he worked on, both for the Apple II and 2GS, and there's some music stuff in there. Kind of a little variety of things. So it's neat stuff. I don't know if any of these games are complete or what the status of them is, but I have to say some of them actually look pretty darn good. It's always humbling when you post your own childhood experiments to see someone else's, how much better they are. This stuff's all a lot better than anything I ever made.
Yeah, certainly better than anything I wrote. But congratulations, Wade, for doing this. Of course, it's called the Bus Files because Antoine's metaphor was that you need to release this stuff on the internet before you get hit by a bus.
That's good. I like that. That's a good metaphor, bus files. In the software industry, we have an expression, each employee has a bus factor, which is how screwed the company would be if that person gets hit by a bus.
Yeah.
So it's considered good team practice to reduce your own bus factor by documenting things that you know and sharing knowledge and so on. Yeah, so that's a nice expression. All right, moving right along. Michael, I always forget how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, Michael. Is it Mahone? Michael Mann?
Yes. Okay. I forget too. I don't think he cares either way, but Michael let us know right. Just because we like to get it right. So
yes. So apologies in advance. Well, not in advance. Apologies, Michael, for once again butchering your name. He is, of course, a Kansas Fest regular and lovable scamp of the Apple II community, and has lately been working on a Burroughs 220 simulator for the Apple II, which I love. I think, as I said before in the show, I love that someone is simulating a very old computer on a slightly less very old computer. So he's updated it, and the latest edition is you can now map peripherals of the 220 to ProDOS files. So that'll allow you to do some neat things, I guess, with simulating the devices that one might attach to a Burroughs 220.
Yeah, it looked like you could do it before, but it was a difficult manual process. It took a lot of steps, and then now that this mapping has been fixed. It's way, way easier. So go do this now.
Yeah, we'll link to the Comsys Apple II thread on this, but it's worth reading just for the opening, where he says, for the thousands of you who've been looking for an easier way to simulate the Bros 220 on your Apple II, have I got the update for you? Bravo. All right. Next up, we have some news from Down Under, is the obligatory way to say that. WozFest is back. What's going on here, Mike?
Yeah, and we'll be sure to get all the details wrong so you guys can correct us. WozFest PR number 6 has been announced for Saturday, April 29th, 2017. Starts around midday Sydney time, and the theme of this will be preservation with a special emphasis on grassroots preservation efforts. So if you're in that area of the world and you're an Apple II fan, you can get there. You should.
Nice. And the last WozFest was 5 1/4, if I'm not mistaken.
Which I'm sure we are, but yeah.
Yeah. And if that's the case, then I look forward to seeing how they continue this trend of clever Apple II number puns.
Yep, slot 7 or something.
Yeah, 7. I guess they can do the 7 thing again. 8 now. Maybe it'll be 8-bit. I don't know. We'll see how long they can keep doing this.
That's right.
We got to cancel it. We ran out of puns. Okay, so speaking of Kansas Fest regulars, Sheppy of Sweet 16 fame has got an update for us. What's the story here, Mike?
Yeah, so Sheppy just wrote, he posted to Comsys Apple II and I'm sure to other places to let us know that Sweet 16 is not in fact dead. It's been a while since he's done any releases or updates on that, but he is continuing to work on it. So I think he just wanted to let us know, and we appreciate that because Sweet 16, I think, is pretty much the best, if not only currently supported. Brain just went dead. Currently supported Apple IIgs emulator on the Mac. Is that right?
I don't know, to be honest. There's a plethora of 2GS emulators, and I have trouble keeping them all straight, to be honest, because there's GSport or or Gsport, as people like to say, and then there's Dig and Brock's fork of that, which I think he's calling GS Plus or something along those lines, because I guess the thing that he based it on was kind of unmaintained and had some issues. So there's a story there. I don't know all the details, but yeah, I'm honestly not sure what the state of emulation is on the two major modern platforms.
Well, my apologies will be forthcoming, I'm sure. Just write in and let me know which ones I've forgotten.
Yes, I mean, of course, there's Kegs and Bernie the Rescue and everything that a lot of these are ultimately based on, but yeah, 2GS emulation is a complicated subject, and we will get email.
Well, thank you, Sheppy, for letting us know. I, for one, enjoy and use Sweet 16 on a regular basis. For
sure. Yeah, it would certainly be my go-to if I was in need of 2GS emulation, I think. All right, so this next story is kind of inspiring and kind of sad. So there's a teenager, which I find already the story is interesting, a teenager with an obsession with very old Apple II gear, or Apple gear in general. And so he's managed to build a very impressive collection of old Apple gear and has been planning to set up a museum. But he ran out of, or he couldn't get funding, I guess. And so then he's selling everything. This is where I get confused. Mike, help me out.
All right. So I don't know if we've specifically talked about Alex Jason on our podcast. I can't imagine that we wouldn't have, but then there's a lot of things that surprise me about this podcast. But I know it's been mentioned on all the other Apple-centric podcasts and blogs and Cult of Mac and things like that. And Alex Jason is a Maine teenager, and he had used lawn mowing money to start the seeds of what turned out to be one of the biggest and most impressive collection of rare and historical Apple devices out there. And including an Apple One and some other, prototypes and things like that. He even managed to get, Mac, Apple II and Apple III case designer Jerry Manick on the board of this museum that he wanted to start. But it looks like, he was not able to raise enough money to, finish the renovations on the building that they wanted in Maine. And so what he's done instead is he's sold his collection to Lonnie Mims, a name you might recognize as the man who owns, I guess, he's up to 4 Apple Ones now. And he was involved in starting the VCF Southeast, and with David Grealish and the museum down there that they've set up. And he's got a huge collection as well. And he's bought these items, and they're going to be part of Lonnie's museum down there, and they'll be rotated in and out of display. So while they won't be Alex's anymore, they'll still be preserved and part of the collection of history. And it looks like it didn't take Alex long to go out and start collecting again. He's already got a few collectible machines in his basement now to replace what he gave away or what he sold.
Yeah, that's where I got confused, because he's setting up a museum with which he will fill with his collection that he's built up, but then he sold the collection to pay for the museum. So yeah, is Lonnie gonna exhibit what's now his stuff in this museum, or?
Well, I think the plan was they had a building that they wanted to use in Maine. Alex wanted to use in Maine for his collection, but it required significant cash resources to get it up to code and set up and all that. And he didn't have that. And Alex's dream was to build this museum. And when it became clear that wasn't going to happen because they didn't have the cash to renovate that building, they wanted these things to still be displayed, and Lonnie stepped in, made an offer, and they accepted that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and so they will be part of the Computer Museum of America in Roswell, Georgia, where Lonnie lives.
Okay, well, good for him for finding a way anyway.
Yeah.
Sticking it out. Interesting kid. All right, so we've got another Apple II emulator project similar to the AVR that we just talked about. This one is sadly entirely devoid of details, but it does look very interesting. I wish the person who built it had done some sort of a write-up on it. So this person has built an emulated Apple II out of a chip computer. That's an acronym, CHIP. These things are a bit like an Arduino or, a Raspberry Pi, one of those types of hobbyist boards. They are intended for like indie game developers. It's like a handheld indie game development platform that hasn't really caught on yet, but hopefully it will. I know that like Earl Evans has talked about it on his podcasts and so on. It's a very neat looking device. If you want to make kind of Nintendo era style games, this might be an interesting platform for it, because it's got a nice little GPU in it dedicated to the purpose and so on. So it's a neat little device, and it's very inexpensive. So this person has emulated an Apple II on it, and it looks really great. It's actually running on a little 3-inch screen in what looks to me like one of Charles Mangan's 3D printed enclosures. It's about that scale. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he doesn't make any mention of retroconnector, so I don't know if he bought them from him or maybe just printed them from Charles's files on Shapeways. I'm not sure, but it's clearly a 3D printed case at about the same scale as I believe Charles's are. So in any case, it's a neat looking thing with some nice pictures and no information about it whatsoever. So do with that as you will.
Does Eric Estrada come and install it for you?
Yeah, maybe.
No,
God, that's a terrible joke, Mike.
Okay,
I'll do the jokes. All right,
You're right.
That's right. You're here for the size. I'm here for the laughs.
I need to know my limitations. I understand.
Grown. Okay, moving right along.
Put that behind us.
Yeah, let's just pretend it never happened. This next item is probably my first encounter with the word transputer. And so this is...
outside of a sci-fi novel, you mean?
Yeah, so there's the article itself, which we will link to in the show notes. And then there's a reference to an older article about the same subject from 6 years ago on A2 Central, which we will also link to. And all of these sources, including the fellow's blog, none of them really explain what a transputer is, but this is one for the Apple II. So it's a very nice looking card. He built a prototype 6 years ago. He finally finished them and is offering them for sale now. He's made a first run of 20. Very nice looking boards. I think what it is like it gives you a way to use an external machine as kind of a coprocessor for your Apple II, is my understanding. Apparently the canonical demo of this is computing Mandelbrot sets. So you plug in like a more powerful computer to your current computer, and it can like offload processing to it. That's my understanding from glossing or skimming over all these articles. I have no idea if that's correct. So,
Well, if it does that, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have no idea what you would do with this thing. It's a very nice looking board. So neat. If you have a spare slot and want to maybe somehow compute some Mandelbrot sets, I would encourage you to do so.
Maybe, speed up your compiling or something.
Maybe, yeah. If somebody knows exactly what the use case is for this thing and what it actually is, please write in and tell us, because we're interested. All right. Let's see. We talked about Lemonade Stand recently. Another very charming educational game with low-res graphics was one called 3 Mile Island. And so we have here an article on Hackaday where somebody who had very fond memories of this game decided to dig it up and play it again. But more than that, apparently the original game had an unfortunate bug in it. And so he decided he was going to fix that bug. And so this is kind of a blog of his adventures in learning how to reverse engineer 6502 code and go on to fix the bug. Apparently the bug was quite a nasty one where the save game key would crash. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's apparently quite a lengthy game that required saving and restoring if you didn't want to sit in front of the computer for hours on end. Apparently saving your game just crashed, and it drove him crazy his entire childhood, and so he finally decided to fix it. So good on you, sir, for fixing this 37-year-old software bug.
Go play and save.
Yeah, it's a good read, though. I recommend it. Let's see. Looks like I'm Fed Up has been updated again. Everyone's favorite disk preservation tool for creating EDD files. What does EDD stand for again, Mike? Do you remember?
I think it's Essential Data Duplicator.
Right. Okay. It's that really high-res bit level capture of floppy disks, right?
Yeah, it competed with Locksmith and Copy2+.
Yeah, okay.
You could feed it parameters for certain titles that existed out there, and it would automatically copy them over. I think the reason that one of the selling points that they tried to push off was that because these parameters allowed EDD to retain the protection from copy to copy, that they weren't cracking the software, and therefore were not pirates, and you could go ahead and use this software without feeling bad.
Wow, that's a thin straw to hang your hopes on.
Yeah.
But, okay, well, it's sort of back in the spotlight again these days because it's kind of the darling of people's hopes and dreams for preserving copy-protected software. It seems to be our best shot at possibly, preserving these disks intact without having to necessarily crack them. Of course, 4AM has been doing great work preserving the software by removing the copy protection, but it would also be nice to, preserve the copy protection itself intact. So EDD might be our best shot at doing that. So lots of people are working on that, including, of course, Antoine Vigneault and Paul Hagstrom did a presentation on it at KFest this year. And I know John Brooks has been doing a lot of work on the 2GS side of things, taking advantage of the speed of the 2GS to hopefully capture more resolution in the bits and in fewer numbers of passes. So, in fact, that's part of this release is single pass copies on the 2GS. I'm not sure if John was involved in that, but possibly so. And it exports FDI files, which is maybe exciting, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm afraid my knowledge of this area is very little.
Yeah, so I think FDI is the extension for the EDD file format. It's interesting that the company that made EDD, Utilico Microware, that's a mouthful right there, but they took their efforts a step further than the Locksmith creators or Copy2+, in that they also created a hardware disk controller system that you could buy and put in your Apple II, which the idea, I guess, was for those really tough titles out there. This piece of hardware could sort of sit between, the drive and the computer and intercept the data as it went back and forth. And I don't know how many of those sold at the time, but I think Henry and Anthony of Ultimate Apple II made some clones. I don't know if those are still available, but if you have one of those, Fed Up will work with that as well and take advantage of the extra features that are in the hardware on that card. Cool.
Yeah. That's my understanding, is that there are limits to how much of a disk, how high resolution of a disk image you can get from just using the standard hardware, because you're limited by the interpretation that the disk 2 controller is doing. So the EDD card sits between the actual floppy drive and the disk controller, and so it's able to capture properties of the disk image that you can't any other way. So it allows them to capture some tricks with timing bits and some other details that you otherwise have no way of capturing, especially with copy protected disks that relied on a lot of the odd behavior of the disk 2 in certain edge cases and so on. So I think the holy grail right now is an emulator that will use EDD disk images. That's one of the problems with them right now, is that there's kind of no way to know if they're working because you can image a disk and then you just have this really high res image of a floppy disk, but you don't really know if it works or if it's actually a good capture. So I think there's some efforts in that direction just starting, but maybe someday.
Yeah, Paul Hagstrom has done a lot of work in that, and we'll have a link to his webpage on that in the show notes.
All right. Well, speaking of Tony Diaz, he's also our next news item. He did a nice post on A2 Central about the recent foofara with the file aux type extension bug in GSOS 603, the recent community release of that. So, he talks all about that bug and the nature of it and how it happened and what's been done about it and so on. Making operating systems is hard, and these bugs certainly are going to happen. So it's nice to see that it's been corrected.
Yeah, it's very cool that Tony went out of his way to write this article as well, because, obviously the bug could have been and was fixed and released, but it could have just been, hey, we fixed it, here it is, and never had really an explanation of what was going on behind the scenes. I know that John Brooks is very busy with what he does, and if he didn't have time to do a big write-up like this, maybe we would never have known. I know that, the FSTs, the file system translators on the 2GS, are sort of this black box of mystery and magic and wonder to this day. So to have something even like this from Tony is really great, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we haven't heard a lot from Tony in the community lately, so it's just nice to see him pop up again. Yeah. All right. Well, Mike, this next news item has your URL on it, so you better talk about it.
Yeah. So I got an email from listener Andrew Rowan the other day from down under that place. And he was pointing out that there was a link on a2central.com that was pointing to Ryan Sunaga's Apple software collection that was now broken. Well, Ryan, of course, passed away a couple of years ago and left this collection, this set of 2GS utilities. They're mostly NDAs and CDAs that had somehow fallen off the net. I mean, there was kind of the half-baked, broken version of the page on Archive that you get when there are a lot of scripts running in the background and that sort of thing. And I managed to collect most of his software and put it up on my Apple2scans.net. We'll have a link in the show notes. But the one thing that we are missing that no one has at least forwarded on to me is something he wrote called Fish NDA, which this is a little NDA on your 2GS. Very useful. It allows you to check whether or not Abe Vigoda is still alive. So if you have that, we'd love to have that.
Okay. Wow. That's critical software. Does it still work? Does it say no now?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because it checks I think it checks his wiki page. So as long as the formatting of the wiki page hasn't changed too radically, then it should still work.
Amazing. All right, I like that. Okay. Gosh. Okay. Let's see. This next item is about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a television show, yes, I believe is well regarded, or is this about the movie?
Well, this is about the television show. It's now in its, I think, 4th season. And there was a scene in a recent episode. It's, and this has been posted about on Facebook and on Twitter all over the place. But there's a scene where one of the agents uses a couple of Apple IIs to boot up a set of old servers that they had running in the background that the bad guy didn't have access to. But it was kind of cool to see the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo rendered on an Apple II screen. And it's funny, you can tell that the actor is young enough never to have used 5 1/4-inch floppy drives because he carefully slides it in with both hands.
Rookie mistake.
Right. And there's some other weirdness about it because there's the rainbow cables that come out of the older versions of the Apple, the Disk 2 floppy drives have been carefully folded back under them and allowed to lay across the keyboard so that you can get some color or something, I guess. But yeah, kind of cool to see that.
That's funny. I like that they actually did the logo in Apple II high res. That's pretty great.
Yep.
And if nothing else, it's proof that there's no Apple II reference in pop culture that is too small for us to talk about.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's it for the news. Let's do a quick eBay segment before we get on to our next big one.
Look, rare! Steve Jobs. Look what we found on eBay.
So this is an item that, I'm glad you linked because I was going to and forgot. A 13 megahertz ultra warp accelerator. This is an unusual item.
Yeah, I actually know nothing about it. It simply caught my eye because if it works, your Apple II will now run at 13 megahertz. I don't know what you would do with that sort of speed. As of this recording, there are 2 days and 17 hours left on the auction. It's up to $410. Quinn, do you know anything about this?
No, I have never heard of this one. It's an 8-bit accelerator, which, those are nowadays of probably zero utility. Back in the day, they would have been good, for AppleWorks or Geos or something if they're compatible, which a lot of accelerators were not very compatible with things, as Laser 128EX users discovered. But I've never heard of this one, but that is blindingly fast for an 8-bit for sure.
So there's I just looked this up over on Contus Apple II. There's a thread from 2013 about the Ultra Warp, and the user who calls himself or herself Stinks. You may recognize that name from all the music that they did and released on SoundCloud. But has a post from 2013 saying that they got their hands on one of these and had written a preview. He was testing it. Plays well with the RAM fast, but it looks like it does work. There's some. He's got some pictures up on Flickr of the thing in operation. So, wow, cool.
Okay. Oh, that's neat. Yeah, my guess is that it probably does some things just fine and doesn't work with everything. That was my experience with the fastest of the 3 accelerator modes on the Laser 128EX was that it would run about 30% of software. So, like AppleSoft Basic, your cursor would blink really fast, and like ProDOS would run really fast, and everything seemed cool and perfect. And then you would try to boot like AppleWorks or Geos or something, and things would just lock up randomly, and it just didn't work very well.
Looks like there were actually a number of versions of these. I'm seeing there was an auction on ebay.fr for an 8 megahertz version, and Stinks' version is actually 16 megahertz. So
16, wow. Huh.
16.667, yeah.
Well, if there's hardcore collectors out there, this is certainly a unique item. I mean, I've never seen one of these before.
Yeah, certainly outpaces even the 10 megahertz rocket chip and, of course, the 8 megahertz zip chip. So
Yeah, the rocket chip was cool. That's something I would like to have one day for the cool factor of it. Again, not especially useful in this day and age, but back in the day, a friend of mine had a rocket chip in his 2C, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yep.
Okay, well, good thing we don't talk about eBay on this show, because that's all the eBay items that we have.
That's right.
So we're going to bring back a segment that we haven't done in a while, just because of our interview schedule, and this is
to annoy someone?
Yeah. Yes, this is the...
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, the magazine flashback segment. We don't have a bumper for this, so we'll just pretend that a charming British lady said something about magazine flashback right here. All right, so we're doing Softalk number 3, volume 1, number 3, November 1980. Shall we begin, Mr. McGinnis?
Of course. So this starts out with a dark cover with apples in utopia and sort of a funky 70s sci-fi font. And there's a musician standing in kind of in the darkness and illuminated in pink and obviously wearing a very 80s suit, and playing a saxophone. And let's dive right in. The first thing we see is an ad for an Axiom an impact printer, which which apparently works well for high res in Pascal, and you can buy it for yourself for $895.
Yeah, I always, until I read these old magazines, I forget how many like weird niche brands of printers there were. Like that was like, that seemed to be the one market where everyone thought, I can start a company here. Like I can't make a computer or joysticks or whatever, but I can make a printer and somehow get a foothold. And this is one of those. The copy, it's sort of strange. They talk about Apple compatibility, and it's in an Apple magazine, but they just talk about an Apple interface, and they don't really explain what that is, and they list it separately from Parallel and Serial. So I'm not sure what they mean by Apple interface exactly. But anyway, it's they were certainly making a go of it. One of my new obsessions is Googling the addresses in all these old ads and just seeing like how legit these companies were. So this one is in Glendale, and it's actually a small industrial space opposite a power substation. So it appears that this was a real company. So they may have even been making these things on site because it looks like a small kind of manufacturing facility. So this company was at least definitely trying to make a real go of it for what that's worth.
Okay, well, it was called the Imp 2, I guess, for Impact 2, Apple 2, something like that. Very clever. Good luck, guys. I hope it sells well.
Yeah. The gotcha with these was always the drivers, right? Like we got an Epson clone of some sort, like an off-brand Japanese Epson clone for our Apple II, and it took us weeks to get it to work. I mean, we did finally get it to work, but I mean, there was 2 banks of dip switches and like a list of like 50 drivers in print shop. And we basically tried every combination of all those things because there was no documentation and no explanation of what was going to work and what wasn't. And we found some random combination of dip switches and driver that worked. And then we just didn't touch it for like 10 years and it kept working. And any new program we got, we knew, okay, we have to call it the whatever Print Master 3000 or whatever, whichever driver we decided worked. And then we just kept it that way. So
yeah, don't lose that information.
Yeah, that was my first kind of experience with trying to get a product to work in that era. Anyway,
all right. Well, up next we have the contest. They've really ramped up on this this monthly contest that they're doing. This month is an anagram hunt. I glanced over the rules here and didn't really.
It got really complicated.
It got very complicated.
There's a lot of math in this contest. I'm not sure. I honestly read it twice and I still don't totally understand what I'm supposed to do.
It looks like sort of the cryptographic letter number swap thing, and from that you're supposed to make an anagram, and there's a list of words that's involved. Very headache inducing. Then they go on to there's a whole big article next on we got some contest winners here, and it talks about they have pictures of each contest winner from the previous, I guess, month. Being handed their prizes. And so they were pretty serious about this. One of them is, Bert Delegata. He's 15 years old and from San Jose, receiving his copy of Computer Ambush from the president of Strategic Simulations. So, it's a big deal. And all the pictures are, of course, it looks like most of them are taken in some sort of Apple shop, with the appropriate 80s hair and beard and 70s shirts and stuff, because computer geeks are a couple of years behind fashion-wise, of course. But yeah, they really picked this up here, and good for them. Yeah,
they were serious about these contests. They definitely, it looks like they had partnerships with companies and dealers and so on to get people free stuff for participating. So what's funny to me is that right after this is a whole bunch of letters complaining about how they didn't have enough time to participate in the contest. So I guess they were still getting all the timing kind of sorted out, like how much time should we give people to send in the answers to each contest. And it made me realize what a different time scale the world operates on now, because, people were complaining because like 2 months wasn't enough time to, participate in these contests. So I guess because, the magazine takes 2-3 weeks to get to some people in certain parts of the country, and then, a week or two to to do the puzzle, and then a week to get the letter back or whatever. And then magazines have a 3-month lead time. So I mean, there's a lot of sort of delay baked into the 80s world that's hard to overcome. So you end up needing 3 or 4 months to let people participate in these contests.
Yeah, with the glut of information and immediate, news and even access to like everything that's ever been written for the Apple II, right there at your fingertips on the internet. It's easy to forget sometimes that, when you got your Nimble magazine or your Softalk in the mail, you had a good, 3 or 4 weeks with just that because you weren't getting anything else until the next cycle came around. So, totally different these days, me as an example, I just sort of skimmed over the rules of the contest and moved on because there's so much more to do. But at the time, you could actually, I guess, sit down and figure out what the hell they were talking about because I don't know.
Yeah. Nowadays, this would be a web form or something that you would fill out, and the whole contest would take 8 seconds. But right. In the 80s magazine world, this contest took 4 months.
And the rest would just be Reddit trolls telling you how much you suck.
Yeah. Well, and I was a bit disappointed, again, not appreciating the timescales. I wanted to know the answer to the apples puzzle.
Yeah, I was looking for that too.
Yeah, was it issue 1 or 2, where
something like that.
You had to count the instances of the word apple in the entire magazine, and I was dying to know the answer to that. I mean, the number wouldn't mean anything. They could tell me it was 700, or they could tell me it was 12, and I'd be like, oh, neat. But I just wanted to know.
Yeah, come on, give it up. Let us know.
So, it doesn't seem like they're giving the answers to any of these contests. Maybe that'll get corrected later on.
I hope so. So there's an ad here from Softape. Apparently you can take this coupon into a Softape retail outlet. Did you know there was a Softape retail outlet?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, me either. And get good for one product only. And I'd forgotten that tapes were, things that you didn't have to buy through the mail back then.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of this. I mean, I guess tapes were never that big in North America anyway for these things, but.
Yeah, the disk drive came out pretty quickly after the 2 was released. So yeah. Although all you got to do is go look at Antoine's tape collection to see how much actually was released on tape.
Yes, that list is very educational for us disc snobs who think that nobody used tapes. That's right. Think again. Europe was using tapes, people.
Muse has an ad for SuperText 2, which is a word processing system. Not very interesting.
The ad's about as exciting as the word processor is.
That's right. Next, we have Uniforms by Apple. What is this?
So you skipped over something. So there's Margot's editorial, of course. The keynote speaker from a recent Kansas Fest. And next to that, there was an ad that caught my eye, so I wanted to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's this ad for business software, and it's very it's very representative of what I find so fascinating about these ads, is in that, first of all, they're expecting people to buy this software based entirely on a small paragraph describing it. There's no screenshots. There's no, list of features or anything. It's just sort of describing, this is general ledger software and this is accounts receivable software and it will do your ledger. So the leap of faith that was required to buy this software is amazing to me. And on top of that, you can't tell anything about these companies from these ads. I mean, this is full column ad with long descriptions of the software, and then at the bottom, it's some company called Small Business Computer Systems, and you've never heard of them, and are they legit? Who knows? So in keeping with my obsession, I Googled this address, and it's a house in suburban Lincoln, Nebraska. So this was literally some guy just written this software. I bet you anything this software was written in BASIC. And for the complete package, he's charging $1980, which I took the liberty of looking up is just over $1,000 today. So I'm dying to know if anybody sent him $1,000 for this software based on this description of it in this magazine.
This may be a tough one to Google, other than because the name of the company one is so generic, Small Business Computer System, and the names of the software package, General Ledger, Accounts Receivable. I don't know how Google would identify that. I mean, I know they're pretty smart at Google, but there's only so much they can do.
Honestly, everything about this is so generic. I think it would be impossible to track down this person or this software. But nowadays you'd have to call it Business Grinder with no vowels or something just to make it Googleable. But
Grinder, really?
It's make it dynamic and exciting.
Sure, it certainly would be exciting.
It would be. If there's one thing accounts receivable needs, it's a little bit of excitement. Okay. All right. So anyway, I found that fascinating. Yeah. $1,000 software. Some guy in Lincoln, Nebraska.
And I guess if you're writing business software, you assume that somebody who's looking for accounts receivable software is going to know what you need, and I guess assume that the software that you're buying is going to have those things because it calls itself General Ledger. I don't know, but yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I mean, is there support? Like, if there's bugs in it, can I call someone and get patches, or like, how does all that work?
Well, there's a phone number, but it's probably Mom, get off the phone.
Yeah, that's right.
Talking to somebody here. I'm important.
Yeah, good times.
And if that's not the case and you actually wrote this in and are listening, I apologize.
Yes, if this person is listening, I would love to talk to you, because I'm fascinated by this type of early independent software development. All right, well, moving right along. So yes, this next major article is called Uniforms by Apple, and it fits neatly into this genre that we've been talking about in these old magazines of articles of sort of desperate to show what people are doing with these computers. Like, look, you can do stuff with them.
So they are useful.
Yes. Of course, this early, your audience is going to be all early adopters, and early adopters, of course, are desperate to rationalize their very expensive purchase. So we'll see. That's not always the case later, but most of these are sort of, the applications are glorified index card stacks of some sort, but
versions of VisiCalc.
Yeah. Glorified agendas and notepads. But for your $4,000, I guess that's better than nothing. So it's a fun little article. It's about 4 students at UCLA. Opens with a picture of a very intense young man using his Apple II. Mark Silverstein apparently has created a custom software program, no doubt in BASIC, to organize the band uniforms, which I did not know this, but marching band uniform management is actually very complicated. So, bravo for that.
Yep.
And so he's kind of used his Apple to solve the problem, which is kind of neat. The thing that stuck out for me, though, at the very back of this, they kind of buried the lead here, I think, because at the back of this, they mentioned that one of the uses of the Apple II that the band has is on their long bus rides. They cite a 14-hour bus ride. They brought along the Apple II, a portable television, and some sort of battery power supply called an Apple Juice, which I've never heard of.
Oh, wow.
And used this to play Space Invaders, Asteroids, Tranquility Base, and Pong on the bus with their Apple II. And I would pay $1,000 for a picture of that. So if someone from the 1980 UCLA Bruins marching band has a picture of that Apple II on that bus, go ahead and get in contact with us, because I want to see that. That sounds amazing. I mean, did they put it on a seat? Did they bring a milk crate to put it on? Did they tie it down somehow? Like, I have to know. This is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So yeah, that's the best part of this article by far for me.
There's an interesting ad here on this page. After you play the Temple of Apshai, you can play Sticks and Stones for free. I don't know. This is apparently a board game that you can get from. Is this actually from? Yeah, it's from Automated Simulations. And so after you get done playing, the hook here is that after you play, 200 rooms of catacombs and untold treasures and eluding beasts and this and that, you can relax. And when you order Temple of Apshai, you get the Sticks and Stones board game for free. And if you're not satisfied with Temple of Apshai, you can keep Sticks and Stones. That's how much they thought of this. I don't know. Now there were a number of, like Lode Runner, there was a board game version of that. I don't know if Sticks and Stones is a version, like a board game version of Temple of Apshai, or if it's just they found a box of these in the back of a warehouse and wanted to get rid of them. So this is what they're doing. I don't know. Yeah,
it's not clear from this ad. I mean, I'm an avid board gamer, both current and old-fashioned style board games, but I've never heard of this one. So it's possible that this is a product of the same company. Some of these early game makers, got started as board or card game makers. So maybe this is their product as well. And so they are just kind of getting rid of some old stock that way. But the wording in the ad is it's just written as though you know what this game is and you're really excited that they're throwing it in with your copy of Temple of Apshai. So I don't know what the story is there, but
you better hurry. The offer is limited.
Yeah, it was. I don't suppose you can still do it. I don't know. I guess I could print this form out and send it in. Maybe I can still get it.
Good luck.
Well, all right, moving right along. So now this to me is the best article in the magazine. So the title is Blind Pathfinder in Alaska. And, for all the fun we make of people trying to, find uses for these computers in 1980, here's a story about, someone actually fulfilling the promise of computers, which is, improving people's lives. And so this is a story of a woman who lost her vision and she lost her job as a result. And she got a new job partially as a result of the Apple II and some custom software that allowed her to do this sort of office administration job, entirely with the Apple II and some speech synthesis and some other, nifty software tools. And it's a fantastic read. So I strongly recommend people give this one a look.
Good for Margot for making sure that this sort of thing was given press coverage. Yeah,
this is the sort of human story that I think Softalk was really great at. That these computer magazines tended to be all about the technology, but here's the human side of how computers could actually improve someone's life. Especially in the 80s when there wasn't accessibility technology. There's a really sobering part of this article that's sort of par for the course for 1980, but to our modern eyes is really alarming that they talk about how one of the most common causes of blindness is diabetes, and most diabetics lose their jobs or can't get new jobs as a result because of the shortened lifespan. Apparently, employers didn't want to hire people with diabetes, and it was more that, according to this, than the blindness, honestly. So,
wow,
yeah, which is astonishingly unethical and horrifying to our modern ears, and now also illegal. But this was 10 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act, so an employer could just be like, nope, you have diabetes, I'm not going to hire you. So in that kind of environment, a computer being able to enable someone in new ways is really transformative.
Yep. Next, we have open discussions. These are letters from readers, and one of these is, I think, goes to what you were saying, Quinn, about the time limits on these contests. Somebody asked for, how about a little more time on these contests? Remember that our post office has not yet entered the electronic age. In fact, I think our local branch is still in the Stone Age, and Softalk responds by saying there will be no more short deadlines. So.
Yeah, you can kind of see there are a little bit of growing pains here. They're getting used to the timescales of the U.S. Post Office in certain regions, certain parts of the country, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting stuff. And at the end of that, actually, there's an ad for Dogfight, which I wanted to mention because that's one of those games like Lemonade or Lady Tut or, one of those file crack games that just showed up everywhere. I must have had 30 copies of Dogfight. Mm-hmm. And yep. What was neat for me is it's actually a really good game, but it was just sort of this throwaway because it was, $50K or something and it was on every floppy. So I never really gave it much thought, but to see this ad for it, and it makes you appreciate that, a real company made this and, was trying to sell it and make money on it. And here I was just, we were all just trading copies of it around like it was nothing. But yeah, it's actually a really excellent game. So by the company's called Microlab. And of course I Googled their address and it's a house in suburban Chicago.
Wow. Okay.
So there you go. Once again, this was another, just dude in his house in suburbia, but, all of their products, there's another Microlab ad later in this magazine, and all of their products are actually really quite good. So whoever this person was, they were doing some good stuff.
Well, in fact, at the end of this Dogfight ad, they advertised that you can receive a special achievement plaque if you're one of the first 10 pilots to reach 10,000 points in any of the auto modes. So they were definitely going the extra mile to please buy our stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And they did prep work for that, which is neat. The game had codes in it that if you reached certain levels, it would give you a secret code. And so the company would have proof that you had achieved it. So that's pretty neat. Good forethought there.
What's next?
Let's see. So we got the news section, like the industry news. And the thing that caught my eye in this one is that they announced that Apple is opening a new office or rather a new factory in Cork, Ireland. For manufacturing Apple IIs for European customers. Of course, it's exciting news here because it's part of, Apple's huge, massive, rapid expansion, yada, yada, yada. And of course, that office is famous now for being Apple's tax shelter. So the Cork office still exists, and they use it to avoid paying taxes on their many hundreds of billions in profits. So yay, I guess.
Yeah, there were at the time they had opened a number of, I guess, distribution centers here in the States, including in Boston, Charlotte, Carrollton, Texas, and two more in California. There's one in Sunnyvale and one down in Costa Mesa. So yeah, they were expanding like crazy. It says since January of 1979, there were 130 Apple employees, or 130 employees, and 80,000 feet of total floor space. So since then, they had spread to occupy 560,000 feet of floor space, and the corporate population was up to 580 employees, growing like crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of offices around the world for a company that's, 4 years old at this point?
Yep, something like that. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. All right, so next we have so the theme of this issue is music on the Apple II, and which, of course, our Atari and Commodore listeners are rolling their eyes at this point, but the music is all centered around add-on hardware, of course, various sound cards and MIDI controllers and synthesizer cards and things. But I'll be honest, Mike, I get lost in most of these articles because it's pretty heavy with the music jargon, and I don't know anything about music, so I kind of skimmed over these. Is there you have any thoughts on all this?
Well, I know that I like music. Yeah, the Apple II, of course, the reputation that it gained quickly was that, the poor graphics in comparison to Atari and Commodore, Atari, and poor sound. And so these were efforts, I think, to sort of make up for some of that. There of course was in fact, earlier in the magazine, there was an ad for the new Alpha Centauri, the MIDI interface, which I think we've talked about before, where you could, go to your Apple dealer and see a hands-on demonstration now. Of course, when one company gets into a field, a bunch of them do. And so it wasn't just ALF. It was, they had their music synthesizer, and then Mountain Hardware, they got into it. And I guess there was a company that I'm not familiar with called American Microbe, but like you, Quinn, I don't know that much about musical terms and kind of the technical side of music. And I just know that all of the stuff at the time was really expensive. And so it wasn't something like that a high schooler like me was going to have the money to just go out and buy.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's interesting how much of this stuff was out there that I didn't know about. I had no idea how broad the market was for this add-on music composition and management hardware for the Apple. So these articles are basically a comparison of, each of these companies has a package that's like possibly includes a synthesizer and then includes some sort of MIDI or interface or controller board or even a synthesizer board. And then there's a software package that goes with it for composition. And so it's sort of a comparison of the strengths and weaknesses of all these packages. And yeah, it's very inside baseball. I mean, it's, complaints about how this particular package represents eighth notes.
Yeah, again, it was very expensive. And I think we were at this point, this was, late 1980, we were probably a ways off from things like the Mockingbird and tools where you could actually, where the Apple II was the thing producing the music. This is a lot more about providing interfaces, computer interfaces to your instruments. So you could compose your music on the Apple and then play it on your keyboard, play it through your keyboard and save it. Or you could, noodle around on your keyboard and have your software running on the Apple II to record the notes and things like that. So, this is well beyond most of what I know about it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in history, we're using the computer to take care of the bookkeeping side of music. So it's, nowadays what we would call sequencing or tracking kinds of software. So it's MIDI control, but none of those terms are used in any of these articles really that I could see. So this is all still like nowadays that kind of control of music is sort of standardized, but at the time here, those concepts, people had the idea that, computers should be able to do this sort of bookkeeping side of music, but no one had really standardized things or given names to it, I guess, yet.
Next, we have a full-page ad for Quality Software, which was run by Don Worth, who has been kind of sort of active recently in the Apple II community. He was the one who wrote the roguelike before there was Rogue called Beneath Apple Manor. Mm-hmm. He also wrote a bunch of other stuff and sold it. It was Asteroids in Space, which I guess is where you would expect to find them.
Yeah.
There's an Astro Apple astrology application. There's a linker software if you're into programming, and there's the Beneath Apple Manor, which you could get on cassette for $14.95 or on diskette for $19.95, and a few other things.
Yeah, I like this ad because it's actually much more modern than the other ads typically are. This is very much like you would see in a computer or video game magazine, in the 90s, where there's actual screenshots of the software. I mean, nowadays, you buy software based solely, or at least in the 90s when you still had magazines, you bought software solely on the screenshots. And, the description was just sort of, you skimmed it or whatever. But he has actual screenshots of a couple of the games here. So that's pretty compelling. I mean, I would definitely buy that over $1,000, accounts receivable software package based on some description of it. Of course, I wouldn't have bought the software accounts receivable anyway, but that's a whole
right.
separate data point. Moving right along, more music stuff. Again, another review of some music software. But hiding in here is another one of my favorite of these mystery software company ads from something called Howard Soft, short for Howard Software Services. And the headline is for the serious Apple II user. And it's a series of packages. There's a tax preparer, a real estate analyzer, and a stock portfolio manager. Again, all no doubt written in AppleSoft Basic. And doing the math on 1980s dollars, these would be somewhere in the range of $500 for these packages. And the address is a house in suburban Los Angeles.
Shocking.
Once again, I Google Street Viewed it. So, again, sending hundreds of, possibly thousands of dollars to some guy based on a text description.
And his name is probably Howard.
Yes, I'm going to guess that is probably how Howard Soft was coined. But that's just speculation, folks. We do not know that, so don't quote us on that.
One thing real quick about the actual article in which that ad was planted was kind of interesting. It's talking about a new computer language called Forte, and the language is actually was written specifically to help to deal with music composition and instruments and things like that. So it's sort of, you see a lot of hardware, obviously, and there's the applications that you could buy, like music construction set and things like that. But this I think took a different approach, where if you were a more programming mind, you could still maybe play with music. I don't know if this really hit the target that they were aiming for, but it looks like an interesting experiment nonetheless.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that's what that was. I don't know anything about it, but I can say that Forte has to be the best possible name for a music composition related programming language. Whoever came up with that, bravo. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's like 3 layers of pun there, and it's fantastic. All right. Moving right along. Let's see. I think we're basically into the title cover article now, which is about a pop synthesizer band called Utopia and how they're using their Apple II. And I was not familiar with this band, but apparently their producer is quite the big deal. I worked with David Bowie and a bunch of other famous people.
Todd Rundgren.
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with these folks, but they're very kind of new wave 80s. One of the pictures, the guy's wearing a full yellow jumper with like a red sports jacket over it. It's the most 80s possible outfit. It's pretty fantastic. So bravo for him. The meat of the article seems to be mainly the main guy who's very excited about the potential of computers for music production and also for graphics, particularly with TV production, broadcast type of graphics. And he has gone so far as to add a lot of very expensive commercial and industrial hardware to his Apple II to make it capable of producing such things. And it's not clear how far he ever got with any of that, but they show pictures of very fancy hardware and things, and him using his Apple II But the main thing I got out of that was that this guy is going to be super excited in like 5 years when the Amiga comes out, because that is really what this guy wants. He's spending a lot of money trying to make his Apple II into an Amiga.
Right. So yeah, the article is called Apple's Adventures in Utopia, and it's sort of a play on the Utopia record label name, which was started by Todd Rundgren. And I'm not particularly, I don't know that much about Rundgren's music, but he's, I think, pretty famous for being early into the computer music scene, and had a lot to do with, I think he actually wrote the software for the Apple graphics tablet, and did a bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, he was an early visionary who was probably about 10 years too old for this, or 10 years earlier than he should have been.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, his heart was in the right place, though. Right.
Now we have an ad for we can take you from Waterloo to the Super Bowl. These are Strategic Simulations Incorporated's current offerings, and again, it's text descriptions of games with a sketch, a hand drawing sketch in the middle of half a guy who's half a Napoleon and half a football player. Again, this is they expect, I think there's sort of this unspoken agreement between producer and buyer that you're going to have to use your imagination in some cases to really get the full experience that we're trying to give you in these games.
Yeah, my guess is that these games are a series of menus written in AppleSoft BASIC and a lot of stats. Is my guess.
I have not played much of their stuff. I do know that SSI was known before they got into computer gaming for their before their tabletop wargaming. And later on, that's really what they turned to. I mean, there's a lot of like early on football stuff and attempts at other things that weren't as close, but yeah.
Early, later on, for sure, SSI became a real player in computer gaming, especially once, they acquired the AD&D license and so on. Things really went well for them. They made a lot of great stuff. But this early, I got to dig up some of these old pieces of software and see what they actually were, because again, no screenshots, very flowery descriptions of how amazingly real everything is or whatever, but what are they? I mean, is it a series of menus? Is it, you really can't tell anything about these games. All right, so the next article that caught my eye was one called The Logical Way, with a very engineering looking graph paper background. And it's a neat kind of article because it's, I don't know if this is a regular column or what, but this particular article is about using the supertext word processor as a form of simple database. And it's a lot of complicated language explaining all this, but it boils down to putting a bunch of pieces of information all on their own line and then using find to jump around in that list. And which sounds comically primitive today, but I think that is kind of actually a big deal.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we take find and finding in documents for granted. Every single window and every single program and every single thing we use has a find, but that was a big deal. And the notion that you could just use a simple word processor for more than it was intended to, just because of that simple feature, I think is kind of neat. It also brings to mind the Canon Cat, what was the Apple II version of it? What was it called again? The
Swift?
Yes, Swift, the Swift card, yes, where you had to like cut your spacebar in half or whatever. Yeah, that was a very similar kind of approach. It's like find is such a powerful concept that we can actually build an entire computing system around that, really, which, we've kind of come full circle back to with, Google Desktop and such things.
Yeah, we don't spend a lot of time focusing on it on this podcast because the end result was more Mac-ish. But the Canon Cat was actually a fascinating experiment. Jeff Raskin, I think, kicked that off, and there was some early sniffing around in what would be similar to hypertext and things like that. So, when Apple didn't want to build his machine, I think he took it to Canon, and that's why it ended up the Canon Cat and not the Apple or something like that. But
yeah,
they're very hard to find these days. But I know that Mike Willigel was for a while sold the plug-in card that you could put in your Apple II and turn it into one of these things.
Yeah, it is a really powerful concept, honestly, and it is pretty visionary for them to have seen that way back then. And like I say, we've come back to that, the idea that if search is powerful enough and good enough, it can replace everything, basically. All other forms of navigation can be replaced with that. And, we're basically there with Spotlight and Google Desktop and those types of technologies where, nowadays they don't expect you to organize your files anymore or anything. You're just expected to drop everything in a giant pile and have a really good search function for it. Which, works if your search is fast enough and, accurate enough.
I think a while back, Microsoft even tried to build an operating system based on a database, and your entire interface, was done through search, and you didn't have a standard file structure as we understand it today. I don't think they managed to pull that off, but it's interesting to see how far it's come and where we're kind of headed.
Yeah, Apple is certainly pushing us in that direction now. Your default whenever you open a Finder window is this thing called All My Files, and you're just expected to search in that, and that actually drives me crazy because it's not quite good enough to use that way. But the search is still a little slow, but they're definitely it's definitely clear that's where we're headed anyway.
Yeah.
So Jeff Raskin was right.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have the next in their exec series where they profile a company or person. And this, of course, in keeping with the music theme, is with Mountain, the hardware computer or the hardware company. I know that they didn't just do the music stuff. They had the clock card, and there was something called the CPS card and a few other things. But I know that they were big into music and sound on the Apple II. Yeah.
There's a nice picture of their offices there, which, looks like an actual office. It's hard to tell. It's behind trees, but there's a big sign out front, though. It looks like it might be someone's house, but then there's also a big sign out front that says Mountain Computer Incorporated. So yeah, I actually Googled that address a long time ago. I was looking around for something to do, probably on a Friday afternoon at work, but yeah, it's this actually is a little industrial complex in kind of a mountain setting. So okay, yeah, that's accurate in this case. Nice. It's not just some guy's basement. It might have started there. Yeah. There's a lot of nice pictures actually there of the management and then their offices and stuff. Ooh, a drive cleaning kit. Yes, gotta have one of those. Another full-page ad from Microlab for something else called the Data Factory, which I guess is a database. Yeah, again, this is a case of, we'll use a bunch of vague terms so you don't really know what's going on here. But yeah, they make some bold claims about how many levels of subtotals they support and things about sizes of names and I don't know. Sales records. Yeah, the things that they brag about database software is a little strange. Available for an introductory price of $100. Yes, that's a bargain. It's about $800 today, maybe $700, something like that. And moving right along now, we've got Roger Wagner's Assembly Lines, everyone's probably favorite column in hindsight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we are fondly revisiting these articles, of course, through Chris Torrance's excellent re-edit of these articles. And this is another good one. So this is part 2 of the original Roger Wagner Assembly Lines. Still a great read. Everyone's Guide to Machine Language, Part 2. He's still going through the very basics, but it's well written and it's easy to understand. And of course, if you are looking to learn assembly language, I would run out and buy Chris's book. And then if you want to, you can come see the original articles here in Softalk. For sure. I mean, yeah, if you want to learn assembly language nowadays on the Apple II, these articles still stand as the single best way to do it. I mean, yeah, that you can read that Chris Torrance's book start to finish and learn Apple II assembly language from zero to I'm making an arcade game in high-res graphics. It's really that good. So yeah, it's the book I wish I had 30 years ago for sure. Chris's attempts to learn assembly language sort of were what started this whole thing to get it republished. So yeah. I could be wrong there, but we have an ad for Continental. Let's see. Nope, it's an ad for Continental Software. And they sell things like LA Land Monopoly and The Mailroom. Exciting. Did you happen to Google this address? I did not. Did you skip over the Wizard and Princess ad? Oh, I did. Yeah, so that was, I wanted to call that out, The Wizard and the Princess, High-Res Adventure number 2 from Online Systems, soon to become Sierra. And, of course, their first game was Mystery House. And what strikes me about this game is, as we'll see later, it's the top seller, I believe, at the moment at this point in history. And it's apparently a really big deal. I really didn't like this game. I distinctly remember having this game, and I was pretty excited about it because of all the graphics. But it's the Graphics Magician era, so it's a bunch of screens drawn by Graphics Magician, stored in this kind of vector format, which is how they're able to get so many in there. And it's it's a 2-word guess the verb text adventure type of thing. I really didn't care for it. And I never quite understood what the appeal of these games was, why they were so popular. But maybe it was just a lack of competition.
Yeah, this was not a title that I was interested in.
No offense to the many people who no doubt worked very hard on it, but it was...
Or if you liked it, we're not saying anything about your taste in Apple games.
Yes. So anyway, you were talking about, the American flag ad. Is that what you're talking about there?
Yes, it's this thing is as a border, they have a bunch of American flags.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Revolutionary Programs from Continental Software. And it's things like LA Land Monopoly. It apparently has high-res graphics. We don't know that because there are no pictures.
Yes.
But it is thoroughly tested, written by professionals, and well documented. So, and it is an address in Rancho Palos Verdes in Southern California. I guarantee you that's a house.
Yeah, I actually think I might recognize roughly where that is. So I kind of know that area.
Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah. My favorite ad portion of this ad is 3D Space Battle, a high-resolution, three-dimensional space game where the player searches an alien ship using the onboard scanners. That could be anything. I mean, I have no idea what that game might look like or whether it's worth $30 or what. I have no idea. Well, and the other part of that same package is 48K Trek, which is, I guarantee you, just a copy of the Unix Star Trek game that went around in the 70s.
You begin to understand why these days Paramount sues everybody that uses the name Trek, because at least on the Apple II there were dozens and dozens of Star Trek clones, and I guarantee you that Paramount never got a penny from that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny that classic Unix game with the grid for the, with the little Klingons and you're moving the little Enterprise around. It's amazing that how many people just repackaged and sold that game for profit.
Next, we have Trade Talk, which is, industry business talk. Thomas J. Lawrence has been appointed general manager of Apple's European operations. Congratulations, Thomas. Most of that looks like pretty boring, executives shuffling around, things like that. I don't see any companies that collapsed or took over any others. Here's an ad for Mystery House High-Res Adventure #1. We were just talking about #2.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it strikes me as we were talking about it, especially how important the graphics were to this, that none of these ads actually have screenshots of the graphics. Now, I don't know if that was because it was expensive to provide those at the time or what, but this just has an admittedly a very well done sketch of a spooky house and a dead tree. But yeah, none of these have screenshots.
Yeah, I always wonder about that too. I mean, it certainly would have been difficult to get screenshots, actual real ones, because of course we didn't have any kind of easy way to go digital to analog and back again in those days. So it would have been difficult, but and it was a big deal that these games had high-res graphics at all. So you'd think they'd want to show that off if they could. On the other hand, maybe they were afraid the primitiveness of the graphics would scare people away, or I don't know. Because, by all accounts, Mystery House was a pretty good game, but, the graphics were definitely very simple. But that doesn't mean it wasn't fun, and it was certainly, like I say, was a big deal that there was graphics at all. So, I don't know what the story is, why they don't have more screenshots.
Huh. All right. Well, next we have an article called Direct Line to Apple Music, the Ivory Keyboard. And it's more music talk. I think this is about the Alpha Centauri.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, very detailed details of combining your synthesizer with your Apple II. The one thing I will call out is halfway through this article, there's an ad for the Eaton 7000 personal computer printer. And this is one of those, so we have these whole categories of generic printers like we were talking about. There's this other whole subcategory of generic receipt printers. And there seems to have been all these companies in the 70s and 80s that made receipt printers and decided that home computer makers needed these things, or home computer users. So I'm fascinated by all these companies trying to sell me receipt printers in these magazines. I mean, I knew a lot of computer users in those days, and I don't know anybody who had or wanted a receipt printer. But they're marketed as easy to use and prints really fast, but it prints a 4-inch wide little thing on thermal paper. And unless you're running a store, I don't know why you would want such a thing.
Yeah, very odd.
Yeah, but anyway, the weirdest things fascinate me. Okay, moving right along. So there's some great pictures next of the Utopia band in their 80s new wave synthesizer glory.
Yeah, gotta love that hair. Oh, we do have an ad here real quick. Another online systems ad. This one's for the high-res graphics for the Apple II Paddle Graphics tablet graphics system, which does have screenshots. So I guess I wanted to show you what you could do with that software, but...
okay. Oh, yeah. I just jumped back to where you were, the paddle graphics. Yeah. So there's actual screenshots in there. So yeah, and they look nice too. Like I would buy that software based on that. And I think that's their software, right? That they use to build their games too, right? Because they had come up with, that was their whole shtick, is that they came up with their own vector graphics kind of format that was very similar in look to what would become Graphics Magician later on, that then Scott Adams-esque games would all be based on. But yeah, that is neat to see some screenshots there. So yeah, that certainly I think helps sell the product.
We do have an ad for Forte, the music language, that article earlier that was talking about the language written for musicians. There's an ad here at the bottom, sold through Soft Tape for $29 on disc or $30 on disc, $20 on cassette. More than 50 commands available. So definitely a neat idea.
And then let's see, we got a full page ad here for the ALF company that we were talking about earlier that had their article about them. And it's a very dramatic ad with a Apple II made into a guitar with attachments and so on. Yeah, it's I still find it such a strange image to me, all these associations with the Apple II and music, because I just never to me, the Apple II was just never about audio. Right. It was not good at that. We all recognize that. That was not its thing. But here's all these really strong associations.
And now we have their Softalk's bestseller lists, and these are a very popular thing. At least all my friends talked about them, and I've heard on other podcasts people talking about the top 30, that Softalk had, whether it was the games or the. I think this particular month is just the top 30 in general. Of course, number 1 is VisiCalc, and number 2 is High Res Adventure. Number 2, number 3 is Bill Budge's 3D graphics system. Down the list, Flight Simulator, Apple Plot, Sargon, et cetera, all the familiar titles that we all love and sometimes loathe. Yeah.
The two things that stuck out to me on this list are that Bill Budge is in there twice, so he's kicking butt at this point. Good for him. And Sargon 2. I didn't realize Sargon 2 was that old. I played a lot of it, and the fact that it was already in the top 30 list in 1980 means it's been out. So this must have come out in 79 or something.
Must be, yep.
So that, I had no idea Sargon 2 was that old. It's still a great Apple II chess game. I mean, it might be the high watermark for Apple II chess. So I had a French teacher back in school who was obsessed with it. He was really, really into chess, and so I brought that in to show him one day, and because he didn't know anything about computers, and we had an Apple II in the back of the French room, and when he discovered, because it played really well. So when he found out that there was this computer chess thing that could beat him, then he was so excited, because now he had this way that he could keep getting better without having to go to tournaments or whatever and try and find people to play with. So that was my own little personal memory of Sargon 2.
I keep playing my students and they suck.
Yeah. These 10-year-olds are all terrible at chess.
Get them out of here. And we'll wrap up this month with an ad for PFS software. Who needs it? You do. And finally, an ad for the Hayes Micro Modem 2, the perfect fit for your Apple II computer.
Yeah, I have two quick thoughts on both of these, actually. So PFS, database software was actually really neat. It was kind of ahead of its time. It was a bit like DBase in that you could create the forms yourself and then control the layout and how the different fields influenced each other and stuff. It wasn't a relational database, but you could, it had a really nice form builder. And so I actually played with that a fair bit. We had a store-bought copy of that. I forget why. Presumably my father bought it because it seemed like important software or something, but we never used it for anything serious. But I would periodically put all my mom's recipes into it and such. And I always sort of weirdly enjoyed that just because it was a really clever interface to use. So anyway, that was PFS. And the Hayes modem ad I like because I didn't realize that they had this modem that was two pieces. There's the interface card in the machine, and then this microcoupler portion that's external. And the microcoupler, if I understand reading this ad correctly, it sounds like the external microcoupler is the actual modem, and the card is basically a serial card.
Yes, I think so.
But I think that's kind of neat because that's actually really clever, and no doubt they made different cards for different computers, and so they could sell this microcouplers, the same unit to everybody, and then just sell different interface types of things for, maybe cards for Apple IIs or joystick port adapters for VIC-20s or whatever. And, everybody could use the same modem. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, it says one part includes the printed circuit board, which holds the micromodem 2, the ROM firmware, and the serial interface, and plugs directly into the Apple II, providing the functions of the serial interface card plus programmable auto dial and auto answer. And the other part is the microcoupler, which connects the board and Apple II to a telephone line. So that thing handles the dial tone and does the actual dialing of the numbers, answers, and hangs up, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And one thing about PFS, I was thinking about that as you were talking. First, this is a nice demonstration of what you were talking about earlier, but with those ads that we know that they're selling general accounting software, but there's no description really of what it actually is. Whereas this tells you exactly what they're talking about. PFS software is different, and it is a personal filing system that lets you communicate with a computer. A little bit general, but then it gets into the details. And I think that's kind of the companies who could advertise this way probably were more successful selling their products.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a beautiful ad. There's a full color picture. There's a picture of the software running on an Apple II, so you can see what it looks like. There's really nice formatting of the text around the Apple II. I mean, it's beautifully laid out, this whole ad.
So PFS was published by Software Publishing Corporation. I think later on they became like PFS Incorporated or something. But I think they were one of the companies that paid attention to when their software was cracked, because I remember there were a bunch of different versions, like a PFS Write and things like that, that if you flip through the pages of Computus magazine, this crack worked last month and it doesn't work on what's out there now.
Oh, interesting. So they morphed their copy protection over time. Oh, that's clever.
Okay, well, that's soft talk for this month. What we got next?
So, and actually, we've only done this segment a couple of times now, but we are curious if people are enjoying it. So, feel free to write in and let us know. Feedback at open-apple.net, and let us know if we should keep doing this. I mean, it's certainly fun for us because it's fun to read through these magazines. And, as we get further in here, we'll probably have to start skipping around more because, these first three issues were less than 50 pages, but, they don't stay that small for very long. So obviously we're not going to
very, very large.
Yeah, we're not going to go page by page through hundreds of pages of the later issues. But, let us know if you like this or if you think it's dumb or whatever. So speaking of letting us know, we got some feedback.
You've listened to us talk. Now it's time to tell us what you think.
All right. First email I've got here is from a listener, Steve, and he writes in to say, show number 30 with Glenda the Atom Adams was up to your usual level of excellence. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. We really enjoyed talking to Glenda.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We jumped at that opportunity and deferred our usual year-end show to talk to the Atom. That was great. And then he goes on to say, I was drinking eggnog and almost spit it out when she mentioned a New Jersey kid acquainted from the pirating scene, and I'll leave it at that. So,
you need to come on our show.
Yes, we're starting to pull threads out of this web here.
Explain, sir.
See where they go. Okay. Let's see. Moving right along. Listener Tony often writes us here at the podcast and has written to say, John Romero has a new webpage up about one of his very early Apple II products from 1982. Called Alien Attack, and it's quite a good little game. I think I remember playing this, but I don't remember for sure. So Oh, apparently it was the first in a series of 5. So anyway, he's got a very nice write-up about it here. There's video footage of it and screenshots and kind of a lot of talk about his design process and what he was thinking when he did certain things and some of the challenges he had with losing data. And there's even some concept art in here. So yeah, this is a really great article. So if you're interested in John Romero's history and his early Apple II stuff, it is a fantastic read.
Awesome.
Let's see. Next in the email box, we've got, I'm going to say listener Mikai. I apologize if I'm mangling that. Looks Dutch. Hello, Quinn and Mike. For a little while, I've been listening to your podcast, and I really enjoy the dynamic topics and tech talk so far. Thank you very much. For the record, I have never owned an Apple product ever. We won't hold that against you. I have touched various Apple II machines, but unfortunately, these were powered off in a local computer museum, and he links to the Spell Computer Museum in the Netherlands. So we can link to that in the show notes. Having used the C64 quite a bit around 1990 for programming, mainly demos and visual effects, I can appreciate anything 6502. And for that matter, anything simple enough to wrap my head around. The Apple II would fit that category fine, I think. And you are correct, sir. He says, I recently regained interest in computers from the 80s and started programming the C64 again. Hope this doesn't earn me a ban. Keep up the good work. Kind regards. Nope. Banning was Mike's thing from no quarter. We are so far ban-free on OpenApple as far as I know.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
All right, so thank you.
Well, maybe if you're an Atari user, but...
Yeah, well, Atari.
Named Kevin.
Yeah. Oh, good, we got our Kevin Savants reference in. All
yes,
right.
there you go.
An angel got its wings. Moving right along, listener Jeremy writes in to say, for your thanks for the show. Keep up the good work. Love the show, but I don't love the magazine reading. So that's fair. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But yeah, do let us know if we can get a sense of whether most people like it, then maybe we'll keep doing it. Who knows? Or maybe we'll just keep doing it anyway because it's our podcast and we're going to do what we want. As far as we know, nobody listens to this thing, so we're just talking into the void here. All right, next up, listener Dave says, love the podcast. I think the Apple II is cool, although my retro computers of choice are the Ohio Scientific, that's an obscure one.
OSI.
Yeah, and old S100 machines and old HP desktop calculators.
Wow.
Running BASIC and disk drives controlling lab equipment over HPIB. You, sir, should listen to the Floppy Days podcast. He's got a very extensive series on the HPs and some of the early desktops they did, the HP 85 and some of that kind of stuff, which was very educational for me because I have an HP 48 that I love and I like HP calculators, but I had no idea that they made calculators that were like proto computers. They had little screens and disk drives, and it's crazy that it's like they never quite made the leap to computer, but they walked right up to that line. Like, let's see how far we can take a calculator before it becomes a computer. That's the HP 85. All right, he goes on to say, I think I have a modern day Apple II sighting. Oh, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which we talked about. Okay, good. All right, well, thanks for that information, Dave. Let's see, and that's all I've got in the email box. Do you have anything else for us, Mike?
Yes, I do have my my usual apology that I need to issue.
Oh, yes, it's our regular apology to Call Apple.
Yes, the apology segment to Call Apple. This month again was my fault. We had recently talked about they had brought the Call Apple magazine back, and you could, if you subscribe to, if you were a member at Call Apple, you could get the digital the PDF issue for free, and I think I had mentioned that they had put one out a while back, and then it's been a while since they'd released the next one, and I thought I had read somewhere that it was because of negative reviews. Well, it turns out that that's not true at all. They were just taking time to get it right. And so I apologize. I did not certainly mean to imply that the product was substandard or anything like that. It's a great magazine. You should go read it now. And Bill and Brian, I apologize. Mm-hmm.
Yes, doing great work over there, Call Apple. And I think at this point we should just add Call Apple apology segment and an apology segment for all of the Australian listeners who we continue to mangle all information related to those two topics. So once again, our research department has been round up and shot. They're terrible. I don't know why where are we getting these people? I don't understand.
Well, it's the same group of people. We just, rehire them all the time.
Yeah. So. I went down there once and it was just cats. The room was all cats. Like, what Who's hiring these people? I don't. Anyway, all right. Well,
I guess we get what we pay for.
Yeah, we do. We are getting what we pay for down there in the research department.
And so are you, dear listener.
That's right. Keep that in mind when you're thinking how terrible we are at this.
Actually, don't, because we want you to contribute to our Patreon.
Yes, that we do. Wow, that was a terrible timing to ask for money, but yes, please contribute to our Patreon. As we've said before, the cost of there are costs to running the show. We pay for hosting and we pay for bandwidth, and we want a service that keeps the quality high and provides unlimited back catalog, which we currently have. So that costs us some money. So we will link to the Patreon in the show notes and help us out. All right, that's all I've got. Mike, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's it for this month. Thank you once again, Quinn, and we look forward to seeing everyone next month.
Yes, thanks for listening, and we will see you all in March.
Bye, everybody.
Remember how we started, not so long ago. Dreamed of giving everyone a personal way to grow. Our dream became reality, and now we're making history. We took imagination and let it lead the way to a new world of discovery. Touching lives every day, bringing smiles to children's faces, opening doors to brand new places. Apple II forever, making life better and better. Apple II forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you. Apple II forever. Ooh, yeah. And as the world keeps changing, we'll be changing too. Reaching out with new ideas, bringing them all to you. Our future keeps on growing and growing. Our colors keep on showing and glowing. Apple II forever, making life better and better. Apple II forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you. Apple II forever. Apple II. Apple II. Leading the way. Apple II. Apple II. Apple II forever, making life better and better. Apple II forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you. Apple II forever, making life better and better. Apple II forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you. Apple II forever. Apple II forever.
This has been the Open Apple Podcast. Subscribe to us in iTunes or visit us at open-apple.net, where you can browse our extensive catalogue of past episodes or read our blog. If you like what you've heard today, or even if you didn't, your comments, questions, or ideas are always welcome. Send them to feedback@open-apple.net.